Welcome back. So, Agent Downfall, unveiling the brutal truth of failure. Are you next? And so what we're going to be doing is we're going to be directly addressing the very prominent headline that there's expected to be a bunch of agents getting out of the business. And I'm going to start out by saying that Julie and I do not see any factual reason why, even with the changes that are happening with commission sharing lawsuits and all the rest of it, that there's going to be a precipitous drop in agents. So with that in mind, what we're going to do is we're going to be answering the 10 tough questions that real estate agents need to be finally answering in order to get into momentum. Because the reason that agents are suffering needlessly right now isn't because there's not tremendous potential, isn't because interest rates are higher, isn't because any of the other things that people want to have you believe. It's because they're not taking the right actions.
So we're going to have 10 questions, which means you're going to have 10 answers. And that leads me back to you, Tim. How can they find these notes? Because this is interactive today.
Yes, please go. All of our notes, unfortunately, we can't drop them into iTunes and Stitcher and Spotify anymore because they're, limiting the amount of space we can drop in. And you guys know that Julie is very good with writing very detailed notes. And so those notes are available for you to use for your own education, but also in case you're educating agents as part of your brokerage or your team. Some of our content could be great for social media posts, but you can only get it if you go to harrisrealestatedaily.com. And our notes are free. The newsletter is free, so subscribe to harrisrealestatedaily.com. We're in the midst of really building up the amount of content on the newsletter. It's kind of one of our latest art projects. But harrisrealestatedaily.com, where all the notes from today's show are going to live. And we're going to talk more and give you more specific reasons why we do not believe there's going to be a precipitous drop in the number of agents. Matter of fact, we actually believe there's going to be an increase in the number of people with real estate licenses, primarily in the United States, because of this market.
Exactly. Now, on to our questions. Question number 1. You're sitting on the beach at the end of this year. What 3 things are you most proud of? What are the 3 things you'll be most proud of a year from today? These can be personal, they could be business, they could be both. When I ask this of coaching clients, often they'll say things like, I'm going to finally have X number of years or months of reserves in cash saved. Or they might say, I'm finally going to be a listing agent. I've been really working on that. I want to get away from paying for buyer leads and things like that. Any number of things could be on your list.
Well, let me set that up with a little bit more detail, because that's something that Julie and I do. And we often will do this once a quarter because we try to set, we set goals that we want to accomplish in 12 months, but most of the goals we set, we want to accomplish every 90 days. That way we can get more things done. It definitely changes the types of goals you're going to set. But with that said, I want you guys to imagine you're visiting Julie and I in Puerto Rico. It's a year from now. And I'm going to ask you this question. What are the 3 things you've accomplished in the last 12 months? It can be 5 things too, that to Julie's point, you're most proud of. Julie mentioned maybe you have so many months or years worth of cash savings on hand. That would be something to be proud of. Maybe you paid off some debt. Maybe you took 10 listings or 20 or 100 listings. Maybe it's you've lost 20 or 100 pounds. I don't know. You guys get it? So when you're thinking about really where you want to try to build momentum, this is similar to goal setting, but what you're really doing by thinking about yourself in the future, sitting on the beach, telling us what you're most proud of, you actually you're gaming your psychology a little bit. Now, just to put this in perspective, if we're sitting on that same beach with you right now, it does not matter what month of the year you're listening to this, and you're thinking back on 12 months and I ask the same questions, what are the 3 things or 5 things that you're most proud of having accomplished in the last 12 months? Notice how the things that probably come to mind, there are some exceptions obviously, the things they're too amoebas. They're like, well, I finally worked on my relationship with my dog, or, things that are not definable. So there's sort of these cloudy, sort of almost opaque thoughts and statements. What we want you to do is a very clear, defined, specific, measurable goals, because that's where you're going to build all your momentum.
Which brings us to the second question. What are your goals in life's 5 most important parts? You can refer to the Real Estate Treasure Map for a deep dive into goal setting, but there are 5 things for you to think about. Family, financial, physical, mental or spiritual, and educational. And your goals, Tim just rattled it off, they have to be SMART, which stands for specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and timely. They must be posted where you can see them daily in order for them to work. So that will help you to answer the first question by working on your goals in those 5 areas of life. We do a lot of work on that in coaching.
I feel like we have to interject this whole I think, myth about balance. Do you think that's a good place?
Sure.
All right. So there's no such thing as balance in life. Stop looking for it. I could just summarize with what I just said. Now, if you find yourself being offended, it's because you've been, frankly, maybe listening and reading to too many, woo-woo people who are trying to lead you down the primrose path. Primrose path being, a lot of spiky things that want to cut you, thus the name Primrose Path, believing that you somehow have to have everything in balance. You cannot have everything in balance. It's impossible. And so here's really how, if you think about this from a practical perspective, at different stages of your life, you're going to be you're going to be focused on different things. And let's say you are, in your 20s and your 30s and your 40s and whatever, you're probably focusing a lot on financial. You're probably focusing a lot on family. You might be focusing on, physical. You guys get it? And as you get older, a lot of people start, finding more interest in religion and I don't like the word spirituality, but religion and God and things like that. Or maybe when you're younger, obviously you're focusing more on educational, right? So you guys get it? So at different parts in your life, at different times in your life, you're going to be focused on those different categories at differing levels of intensity. That means that you do not ever have to have balance, because where we've seen the whole balance concept go awry is we will have coaching clients who are coming to us and saying, I've been trying to get my life in balance. And I'll ask them what it means. And they'll, say, there's these 5 categories of life. I'm trying to divvy up my time every single day. So I'm spending the same amount of time with my family, my finances, my physical, Well, guess what? If they've got 3 little kids all under the age of 8, I promise you a lot of time is going to be going to family, and maybe not so much time is going to be spent on one of the other categories. You guys get it? So give up on the idea that there's ever going to be balance, because there isn't, and focus on the things that are, appropriate for your age, frankly.
Yes, and that's why they have to be attainable and realistic and timely. Your goals aren't supposed to stay stagnant for your whole life or even for the whole year. You've got to be massaging these all the time. And to your point, we like to do them every 90 days. You've got to revisit them, and you can, move them around a little bit.
You want to talk about that a bit?
Sure.
So if Julie and I, for example, were setting up a specific financial goal, because financial goals are, by the way, the easiest to accomplish, because it's obviously easier to track. It's very, black and white.
It's specific.
Right. It's specific. Well, what we'll do is we'll write down what a financial goal is for the next 12 months. And then what we'll do is review that every 90 days to see if we're ahead, on track or behind what that specific goal is. But we've also learned to do that with other things. It's harder to do that with family stuff, but it's easier to do that with, say, physical stuff, right? You want to, get to the point where you're able to start swinging a 53-pound kettlebell 100 times, things like that. But you've got to be constantly setting very specific, and updating as you accomplish them. So, for example, Julie had the goal of being able to, 3 days of the week, swing a 53-pound kettlebell 100 times, not all at once, but, groups of 25, right? If that were her goal, and she accomplished that, and she set that goal in January, and she accomplished it, say, by the end of February, it's time for Julie to probably increase the amount of weight, because she's got to actually learn, her body's ready to move on. That's the point of revisiting your goals on a regular basis.
Exactly. So, and which is why you have to have them posted to remind yourself to revisit them. All right. So that leads us to number 3. Here's a big question. What would you change about your goals if you weren't afraid of failure? So are you setting easy goals, or are you setting stretch goals that will require more work but garner better results? Now, that doesn't mean to make them such a stretch that it's not attainable. Remember our SMART requirement here. It has to be attainable. But is it enough of a stretch that you have to be upgrading your skills, you have to be making the effort? Or are you choosing, if we're being honest, kind of wussy goals that aren't that exciting?
Well, most people set wussy goals that aren't that exciting. That's the reason they never start doing them, because they're not excited about them.
Yes.
And so can we tell the story about the arrow?
Sure.
All right. So I want you to imagine, I was a Boy Scout for a blank when I was a kid. So I want you to, when we went to the Boy Scout camp, some of you guys know what I'm talking about. Gals, I don't think you guys shot bows and arrows at Girl Scout camp. Maybe not.
I don't think so.
Yeah. Well, so at Boy Scout camp, there was these things called jamboree. You do it once a year, and you would show up, and I mean, it was, guns and arrows and bows and just all these, typical, I'd say manly
boy stuff.
Exactly, boy stuff. Well, so I was learning how to use all these different firearms and all the rest of it, but the bow and arrow was my greatest challenge, until I had somebody, one of the, whatever he was, the father basically of one of my kids that were also in my troop, watched me and told me what I was doing wrong. So what I was doing was I had the strength to hold the bow, hold the arrow, pull the whole thing back and launch it. But I kept on having my arrow fall short of the actual target. Every single time after time, I was getting frustrated. I was going to give up. And he came over to me and he said, Tim, when you're trying to accomplish a goal, do not aim at dead center at the target, which is where I was aiming. Aim above the target. So I want you to put yourself in, visualize this with me. You are now standing at that target. You have the bow. If you're right-handed, left-handed, adjust accordingly. I want you to physically try to put yourself in the place where you can feel the actual bow in your hand. Like, I'm right-handed, so I'm feeling the bow in my left hand. I want you to imagine between your fingers, you're feeling the arrow, right? And I want you to imagine the tension as you pull the arrow back, or you pull the bow back. And then I want you to feel that your arm is maybe shaking a little bit, maybe you've been holding it too long. You're adjusting your aim, and then you release that arrow. If you release that arrow at the target, because of gravity, by the time that arrow gets anywhere close to the target, it's usually going to fall, not even hit the target, or if it does hit the target, it's going to hit below dead center, whereas the red target is in the center, which is what you're trying to accomplish. If you aim above the target, what is going to happen is gravity is going to work for you and pull that arrow right into dead center. So what most people do is they aim too low with their goals, and they don't even try. They give up too soon because they're not excited, not motivated by their goals. Or if, for example, Julie set the goal of being able to swing consistently 53 pounds, which now she can easily do. And now it's become, she's saying now for the next few months, that's what my goal is, 53 pounds. She's actually going to lose momentum on her physicality versus if she'd increased. Maybe she's going to increase to 63 pounds or 73 pounds. You're going to increase to 73 pounds?
I don't know if they have that weight, but I'll be increasing something.
They have 70.
Yeah, well,
You guys get the concept? So when you're setting goals, you have to aim above the target. If you set a goal that you know for damn sure you can accomplish, you probably won't even start to try to accomplish it because it does not excite you. It does not even, you want something that's going to be slightly intimidating, because then you're really going to say, damn it, I'm going to kick this goal's ass.
And think of how much better you'll feel when you do that.
Exactly.
Because it was a bigger goal. All right, question number 4. Are you willing to be consciously incompetent to move your business and life forward to the next level? Again, we've done podcasts about the stages of mastery, and I know they all kind of sound the same, so refer to the notes. 4 stages of mastery. Unconscious incompetence. That's when you don't know what you don't know. That leads you to be consciously incompetent. Aha, I need to get help with this. I need to work on it. And once you have the skills, you move into the 3rd stage, conscious competence. You now know what you're doing. You still have to work at it, but you've got your skills and you're using them. And then unconscious competence. This is basically autopilot. You have your skills so polished that you're getting the results virtually. It seems effortless, but you are forgetting the first 3 stages. So in order to become more competent, you must first accept and embrace that 2nd stage known as conscious incompetence. This is where most coaching clients are in some level of conscious incompetence or conscious competence when they're polishing their skills.
Well, so in other words, the conscious incompetence unfortunately occurs after you've probably had a few losses. That's where you realize.
Usually.
Yeah, that's where you realize, well, I'm not as good as I thought I was, or turns out my winning personality is not going to win every single time. And if you are wanting to continue to, ascend in your career and life in general, you have to say, well, now it's time for me to basically get help. Read books, listen to podcasts, hire a coach. You're going to have to challenge yourself to go to the next level. Even if you're not in a financial position to do any of those things, you can just essentially pay attention to people that are ahead or higher up on the ladder than you are, and emulate them as much as you can just from observing them. But get to the point as fast as possible where you're consciously incompetent. That's the place where you can say, not with glee, because it's frankly not easy to do, where you can say, I am terrible at this. I am looking forward to the challenge of actually getting better at it. And if you're not feeling that way about anything in your life, you are becoming complacent 100% of the time. So look for the things that are going to make you feel like an incompetent newbie, because that's where your growth is going to be.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't just roll into the gym and start swinging kettlebells.
No.
I would have hurt myself, right? And it was pretty intimidating, but it was something that you and I studied. We wanted to do it, so we got some training on that from Manuel before we just magically became good at it. Okay, so that leads us to point number 5, related to this. Are you truly willing to do what you don't want to do when you don't want to do it, which will be virtually every day, at a high level so that you can succeed at a high level? What are you avoiding the most in your real estate practice? What are you avoiding the most in life? Remember, the hardest things are also the most effective, and that is why it's called work and not vacation.
Well, I have to tell a story. So we're standing in front of an audience in Ankeny, Iowa, of all places, and we were talking about listings, and they were all, of course, telling me that there's no inventory, everything is sold, there's all the things. And I said to them, well, okay, I'm going to give you guys all a challenge. And you, long-time show listeners, you know what I'm about to say, but it is really, I think, very effective at making a point. if you're trying to determine what you don't want to do, and you're saying, well, I'm doing plenty of what I don't want to do and I'm doing it at the highest level, you're just doing the wrong things. Okay. I'll prove it to you. So I'm standing in front of this room, Julie and I are, and we give them a challenge. We said, okay, I'm going to put out $1 million, and whoever can take, it was like 10 listings or 20 listings in the next 90 days, they will win. It was all hypothetical, right? We're not giving people in Lincoln, Iowa $1 million. But the point is to really set them up emotionally to expand their thinking. So you get $1 million, all taxes paid, but you have to take, I'll just make up a number, 20 listings in the next 90 days. Okay? That, and everyone's like, oh my gosh, that'd be life-changing. Okay. So how are you going to do it? And then, they all started to you could tell that their brains were going towards marketing and advertising and buying leads and all the rest of it. I said listings. I did not say buyers. Then I asked the better question, which is really the most salient, the question that cuts through all the bullshit. What are you going to stop doing? That's what I asked them. And that's where the room always gets quiet every time we do that. What are you going to stop doing? You have to take 20 listings in the next 90 days. What are you going to stop doing? Every single one of you know the things that you'd stop doing. You know the things that aren't getting you results. And so one of the things that Julie and I always prescribe is if you cannot absolutely 100% see the result of something that you're spending money on or your time on in 90 days or less, stop doing it. Julie was, someone messaged me the other day and wants to be coached by Julie. Julie is expensive. This person was thinking twice about whether or not they wanted to invest this much in coaching, to which I told them, if you cannot 100% know after every month that you paid Julie her very expensive coaching bill that you are going to make at least 3 or 4x the amount that you paid her, quit. That's what I told him. And that's what we tell you. So if you're doing something right now and hoping and praying that one day it's going to put money in your pocket and it hasn't yet, you already know that it's not going to. What you're doing is you're doing what we call work theater. You're doing all the social media and the marketing, the generating and the branding, all the rest of it, hoping and convincing yourself that you're working. But I'll ask you the question again. If you had to take 20 listings in the next 90 days and you got, $1 million bonus, in addition to all the commission you're going to get, what would you stop doing? It's all the things that you're probably spending all your time doing. So what would you do? You know what you would do. You pick up the phone. You go directly to expired. You go directly to all the other sources that we teach you in Premier Coaching of the people, the sellers that already have their hands in the air saying, yes, I absolutely want to sell my house. You guys getting it? You already know what to do. You just aren't doing what you know you need to do. And why? Why is it that you're continuing to procrastinate it? You have to get to the point where you have to be willing to do what you don't want to do when you don't want to do it at the highest level. And there's an extension to that for periods, for longer periods of time than you actually anticipate or what you've been told or what you believe is, reality from Instagram or whatever. Long-term levels of ever-increasing success only come from doing what you don't want to do when you don't want to do it at the highest level. By long-term, I mean your entire life.
Exactly. So that leads us to number 6. Are comfort and complacency more important to you than discomfort and progress? All these mindset thoughts are related, aren't they? So have you ever noticed that people who are in good shape are also doing well in business? What are you already disciplined at, and how did you get that way? Sometimes you guys make real estate, being successful in real estate, far too different than anything that you're already disciplined and successful at. Now, if you've never been disciplined at anything, it's time to get and follow the Real Estate Treasure Map and be supported in your goals by joining Premier Coaching so we can show you that. And if you are disciplined, I have lots of coaching clients that have certain successes. It could be sports, arts, music, whatever the case may be. And once we have the conversation that, what did it take for you to get really good? Well, I had to practice. I had to have coaching. I had to upgrade my skill set. I had to maybe fail a little bit more than I was comfortable with. I had to change what I was doing wrong. Well, that's exactly like real estate, isn't it? But not everybody thinks of it that way.
Well, we ended yesterday's show with basically the five no challenge, right? Mm-hmm. So are you, Julie's point 6, are you comfortable and complacent, or being comfortable and complacent more important to you than discomfort and progress? Well, most of you, if you're being honest with yourself, you're going to realize that your entire life is basically about, nerfing your life up so you only feel comfort and you never have to feel anything that's going to challenge yourself that make you frankly uncomfortable. And if you want a gut check on that, I'll remind you what I said to you in yesterday's show. If you are not hearing the word no from a potential buyer or seller at least 5 times a day, and it can't be someone messaged me, what if it's the same person saying no 5 times? No.
No.
Individual buyers and sellers, if you're not hearing the word no at least 5 times a day, you're not actually working that day. In other words, you've not yet put yourself in a position where you're willing to have conversations with potential buyers and sellers about actually buying real estate, asking them questions that will result in you potentially hearing no. For some of you, the word no is similar to like a neutron bomb hitting you right between the eyes. You are emotionally fearful of hearing the word no. You're absolutely, really paralyzed by the idea that someone's going to reject you. They're not rejecting you. They're just rejecting basically your approach at that particular moment. Learn the skill sets necessary, and you'll soon discover that everything you want in life is on the other side of hearing the word no. And that goes back to doing what you don't want to do when you don't want to do it at the highest level. And that might be overcoming your fear of hearing the word no.
Which is very common, and it's okay, but it's not okay to hang on to that. You've got to work on that. So point number 7, what would it feel like to emotionally connect to your goals? How do you feel when you're truly engaged with your goals? Now, if you're not quite there yet, maybe this is new to you. Maybe you're doing a radical overhaul and upgrade of your goals. It helps to listen to podcasts, read books about people who have attained their goals, read or listen to biographies about people who have succeeded the way that you want to. That's kind of like, when you're learning a language and you do a deep immersion and it's so much easier to pick up the language than to do it piecemeal. When you stuff your head full of things that are on your side of the goal setting and you're surrounded by people who are successful, that's the whole reason that we do coaching every day, so that you can be surrounded by like-minded colleagues.
There's a lot of landmines in that point, though, Julie, and I'm going to point some out. Have you all noticed that when people become successful, all of a sudden they start acting like it was easy? Have you noticed that sort of like there's a big conspiratory lie out there when you're hearing somebody, it's not everybody, but people either forget or they don't want to admit the fact that they aren't naturals, right? I heard Richard Branson being interviewed, and he always tries to speak as some sort of like, somehow the universe just aligned, all these weird woo-woo stuff that he doesn't talk about the fact of all the work that was involved. Now, I've listened to some podcasts that are talking about essentially the struggles that went into the creation of Richard Branson. He doesn't talk about that stuff when he's being interviewed. There's something about in the modern, culture amongst some people where they want to basically make it so that they were just naturals and never actually had to struggle. There is not a human on planet Earth who has accomplished, high levels of anything who hasn't had to embrace the suck. And even if they don't want to tell you that, even if they want to, and that happens a lot of times when people have accomplished a lot of financial goals, but I'm giving them a slight hall pass because maybe they've forgotten the struggle. Maybe they've forgotten all the little tiny micro steps and all the constant, macerations that went on in their lives to become the person that they are. But I think for the most part, what a lot of them are doing is there's this popular myth that they were an overnight success and it just all came their way.
Yes, so I would polish that up by saying it depends a lot on who, which biography and who's interviewing him and things like that. And we've both heard really good interviews and really good biographies, and other ones where it's like you said, not so much, not so fast. Like I like a lot of the stuff on Elon Musk when they get him talking about some of the struggles that he did go through before he has all these amazing companies, because he's somebody that's absolutely built it from the ground up.
He talks about sleeping in the floor of the Tesla
That's
factory.
the ones I like, right?
Yeah, but look at that. Here, arguably, guys, if you think he's rich now, trust me when I tell you, he's going to be the world's first trillionaire. SpaceX, all these other, companies that are still privately held primarily by him have yet to go public. It's not all about Tesla. But when you see all those other companies go public, you're going to see the world's first trillionaire. It's going to be Elon Musk. And if you look at the value that he's provided, the really millions of people today and the billions of people in the future that he's provided value from as a result of his effort, he deserves to be the world's first trillionaire. Now, I love listening to Elon Musk describe his own struggles because he's very contemplative about answering questions and he's very brutally honest. That's what the world needs more of. It needs fewer of these people that try to make it so how they have some sort of spiritual enlightenment that causes the money just to fill their coffers.
100% agree. And you know where I use Elon Musk in my mindset? When I have days where I think I'm so busy, I think about can you imagine the meetings and the schedule and the thought process and the research and all of the action that he has to take, even at his level, having developed the things that he has? It must be astonishing. I can't even imagine how to be that organized. But that's where he lives in my mindset is I'm not busy. That guy's busy.
Yeah, I'm lazy, right?
Yeah.
But it's also
doesn't?
kind of interesting. I occasionally, again, it's the same people that don't want to admit that it takes long periods of time of doing what you don't want to do when you don't want to do it at the highest level. Those same people will say, oh, but look at Elon Musk's relationships. They said this about Steve Jobs.
Yeah.
Oh, look how Steve treated his wife or his daughter, Lisa. Or look at how supposedly Elon Musk is mean to his employees. They always want you to believe that, the person has to be some sort of mean, evil ogre in order to accomplish high levels of success. No, they were successful and will continue to be because they did what they didn't want to do when they didn't want to do it at the highest level for long damn periods of time, and they still are. So do not allow, again, this sort of, I think, this downward adult failure spiral that sucks in so many people all the time into belief, and it's always in the press. It's always in the media. People are always trying to dump on people that are successful. And if you absorb that stuff, that's going to be one of the biggest reasons that you're procrastinating. That's going to be one of the greatest destroyers of your success. And I'll add this point because I see Julie didn't include it. If you want a real quick anecdote to all the problems that you're experiencing emotionally and probably financially, start with being completely media free. That is one of the greatest gifts you can give to yourself. Am I really talking about one of your next points?
Yep.
Is it literally your next point?
It's a point ahead.
Okay. All right.
It's okay.
Sorry.
It's all right.
Continue.
Well, that's point number 9. Before we get there, point number 8, and I agree with you. We just aren't quite there yet. Are you willing to own both your success and your temporary failure? Are you a blame taker or a blame thrower? How would your life change if you owned everything that happened to you? We often talk about this in some of our mindset series where we say, you've got to say it's too soon to tell. And combine that with, if it's meant to be, it's up to me, right? So you've got to own both your success and your temporary failure.
Don't allow yourself to believe that you didn't take that listing because the other agent priced it higher or took a different commissioner, knows them from their bowling league, right? That is you essentially creating an excuse for your failure. You didn't take that listing because the seller thought the other agent was more competent. Period.
Find out specifically why and correct course.
Take all responsibility for everything that's bad's ever happened to you. And I realize that's an extreme approach, but what it does is it cuts through one of the greatest, most evil things that you can allow into your soul, and that's allowing yourself to feel like a victim. So if you start by saying everything is my responsibility, everything that's good or bad that's happened to me is because of decisions I made. Again, I know that's not always true, but I'm trying to make a mindset point here. If you start out from that frame, if you frame your situations like that, then you won't allow yourself to become a victim. And again, work on that. That is very powerful. And Julie gave you sort of the slight hack for that. When you're experiencing something that feels like a low, or you're experiencing something that feels like a real high, say to yourself, it's too soon to tell, because the human, we are not designed to experience real low lows followed by real high highs followed by real low lows. So put yourself in a place, because you'll emotionally burn yourself out. If you're feeling emotionally burned out right now, I bet you just came off a real big high or big low, or maybe a series of events. Give yourself a little bit of a break and then start out with point number 9.
Point number 9 is all about being media free, except for this podcast, of course. So media free. Here's the question. Are you consciously curating what goes into your eyes and your ears so that what comes out of your mouth is what you wish? Are you more positive or negative? What's causing either one? And if you're not sure, would your friends, prospects, and clients say that you are generally positive and professional, or do you sometimes feel ghosted? Do you lead with productivity? Do you lead with procrastination? Are you a chronic complainer? Are you monitoring all that? So you have to consciously curate what you're listening to, what you're watching. That does include podcasts. It certainly includes media. If you want, the fast track for that, go probably 95% media free.
Well, my mom lives with us. She's 84 years old. She moved down to Puerto Rico with us, when we moved here, and lived with us basically since when Zoe was born.
Yep.
My dad passed away in 2009, so mom was alone in Ohio, so she lived with us, and I can always tell when she's been watching the news.
Me too.
And Julie and I, there's no TVs in our house, and we do have one TV, but we're watching movies. That's it. But my mom will start acting a little bit, off, and it's because she's been watching the news, And sure enough, on our iPad, we'll glance at it, and she's reading some garbage headline from some garbage media outlet. And I'll say to her, Mom, are you watching the news again? And, she'll go like, how does he know? You could tell, what she's thinking. Yeah. And she goes, yeah, I have been. I said, well, how's it make you feel, Mom? And she said, and she'll, sometimes ignore me. And other times she'll say how she feels. And then she gets the point. You have to allow yourself to accept the fact. And honestly, this breaks my heart because I grew up, when you could mostly trust the media. But can you trust any of the media now? Can you trust any of the news channels?
It's a dumpster fire.
I mean, it is a dumpster fire. Can you trust anything that's trying to tell you what's going on in the world? You can't. You got to do your own homework. That's the power of podcasts. That's the reason major media hates podcasts, by the way, because they can't yet figure out a way to control the messaging that's coming from people that oftentimes really are true experts versus the fake experts that you see in the media. So if you really want to get control of your mindset, if you really want to get control of your downrange potential, start out by completely purging all forms of media. Now, granted, this podcast, maybe some other things that you should keep in your life. And here's the litmus test to know whether something should stay or should go. After you've listened to or read something, how do you feel? Right? After you listen to this podcast today, how do you feel? You probably feel optimistic. You probably feel empowered. You probably feel hopefully educated. You feel good, don't you? That's something you should continue doing. But if you didn't listen to another podcast about the world coming to an end or some other salacious headline, how do you start to feel? Fearful, scared. You no longer want to be, certainly don't feel optimistic. You certainly don't feel like helping people. You start to basically mentally and emotionally start digging your own dugout, and you're going to go hide in there and wait for the clouds to clear. I'm trying to make you guys laugh, but hopefully you're understanding the point. So if you want to know what you should remove from your life, start by asking yourself, be introspective after you've consumed said media. How do you feel right now? And you will discover that 90% of the time, maybe even 99% of the time, the crap you're allowing in your ears or in your eyes is stuff you should completely purge from your life. And here's the magical thing that will happen. As soon as you start removing all this, garbage from your life, you will actually feel, at first, you're going to go through withdrawal. Withdrawal like as if you were coming off nicotine or caffeine, right? Right? You're going to actually feel you're losing something. Oh my gosh, I'm missing a headline. On the I Hate Life podcast, I Hate Life Reddit, whatever group you belong to, I can't read what, Crazy Bob in Omaha, what he hates today or whatever the hell it is. Again, trying to make you guys laugh. But when you start removing that stuff from your life, you're going to feel a loss of community because you didn't realize that you became part of the little communities that you tune into on a regular basis. When you remove yourself from that, there will be a natural and normal sense of of loss, of feeling disconnected from something that became normalized in your life. Well, don't then say, well, I want to have that emotional connection again. I'm going to go back to it. Instead, ride that emotion out because the feeling and the intensity of that fear of loss will dissipate over time. Might take weeks, might take months, but don't go back to it. Don't start hitting that crack pipe of bad news again. Stay off of it. Stay on the path that you're on because there's an absolute fact. Nature abhors a vacuum. As soon as you create a vacuum, in other words, you've removed all this crap from your life, you're going to start feeling better. You're going to start having more meaningful conversations because you're going to be sincerely present with the person you're talking to. You're going to sleep better. You're going to have better sex. You're going to want to work out. You're going to want to take care of yourself. You're going to want to start thinking about becoming the best version of yourself. But you have to give yourself the room mentally and emotionally to allow those new thoughts and those new feelings and those new neural pathways to form.
Well, excellently said. And I put a little spin to the end here. After you have purged all of the dumpster fire of news outlets and horrible crap that pollutes your mind, and I think if you're introspective, you certainly can notice that. I love what you said about, did it make you feel good or did it make you feel bad? I work very hard at curating the things that I listen to and watch. So once you have purged all of the bad crap, and I think if people are honest, they know what it is, right? So then you can rebuild what Napoleon Hill called the mastermind, right? Now, mastermind people don't have to all even be alive. You can build your mastermind from a combination. This is what I'm actively working on myself. I'm curating this all the time, and sometimes I prune them.
They're going to be curious what you're tuning into. Julie is really studying Christianity and learning more about religion. She's had some exposure, obviously, but she's wanting to increase her depth and connectiveness to that specific facet of her life, because she's at a point in her life where that's become more important to her. And obviously we're trying not to raise a heathen.
Actively trying to not raise a heathen.
Most days we do a decent job.
Most days. But it's something that I've become more and more interested in. I want to spend some more time on. There's a great book I'm reading called Elevator Pitches for God. I don't remember the author's name offhand, but these are short essays from people. Some of them are scientists. Some of them are rabbis. Some of them are preachers. Some of them are mathematicians. It's a great swath of different kind of thinker types. I also listen to different podcasts where they're discussing these things and taking concepts apart, putting them back together, in addition of all of my real estate stuff that I have to study.
And every night you're reading Zoe.
Bible stories.
You guys are on the New Testament, right?
Yep, exactly.
It's for children.
For kids.
Yeah, for kids.
We're going to start the 10 Commandments next.
That's awesome.
With, pictures and explanations and things like this. But my point is, I want to go back to Napoleon, who said, your job is to curate your own mastermind. Your mastermind should be something that makes you feel good, things that you're interested in, things that lift you up. That can be a combination of podcasts, people that you like. We're going to do a podcast about 3 levels of friendship, right? People that make you feel good, books that you like to read, authors you like to read, maybe historical figures that you believe in and make you a better person. And of course, that's why people love Premier Coaching, is because that's part of their mastermind family.
Here's the hard part.
Yes.
And what we're saying. What if everyone in your life is a negative Nelly? What if everyone in your life is their own little, micro dumpster fire?
That can happen.
What if your family is nothing but a bunch of dumpster fires? What if your friends, your community, your neighbors? And that almost always is the case, by the way. That means, to Julie's point, you're going to have to create your own mastermind through podcasts, through books, through reading biographies, through, traveling, getting the hell out of your own backyard. Because people of similar mindsets, not just political persuasions, have a tendency to surround themselves with other people that are similar. And then all of a sudden you're living in a bubble of like-minded people that are having a bunch of, essentially negative thinking.
Yes. And I want to give a shout out to Jenny Wells, one of my coaching clients in Hilton Head, because she's very good at curating what she reads and listens to. We share books for different reasons as part of her coaching. She does a great job on this. Now, here's the thing about books and podcasts. You have, because I've been thinking about this, right? As I curate my own collection of mastermindy types of things. Both podcasts and books, whether those are Audible or regular hard copy books, right? That's something that you specifically chose, that you are interested in, and does not really have the ability, like a lot of social media, to then start feeding you things. You know how you read one, this drives me crazy. I'll maybe watch something about an animal rescue, right? Some video that I thought was really cute on YouTube or something. And then all of a sudden it sends me all of this really dramatic, horrible stuff about animals being abused and this and that. And I don't even know if it's true or not. I don't want anything to do with that. Okay. I want to know, if I'm reading this author, that I can concentrate on that. If I'm listening to this podcast, it's because I've interviewed that podcast, and that's something that's important to me.
But what you're saying is a really important point. So first of all, if you're listening to something, like I just ditched a book that I was listening to, and I just determined it's garbage. So boom, boom, bye-bye book, right? Yes. I got into it like 4 chapters. I was like, this is awful. Wasn't what I thought it was going to be. So I stopped listening to it. So what Julie is doing is she's actually being very, filtery with the things that she's allowing to, enter into her head, into her mindset, into her spirit. And she's, reinforcing it with other sources that she trusts. And maybe those are podcasts where she trusts the host. And that trust was probably over many, many years of, them being consistent with their messaging, things like that.
I'm auditioning things.
You're auditioning things, right. And so, unfortunately, in this time right now, where most things are seeming, guys, here's what's going on in the world. This is our opinion. There's a pendulum. Do you guys know what a pendulum is? Remember, I don't know how to describe it. I don't know what the actual name of it was, but there used to be this little thing you'd put on a desk with balls, and you click one and it caused the others to move. Mm-hmm. Well, the pendulum now has swung and over, I won't say corrected, but it's definitely swung to one particular side societally and, with everything else. And what's going to happen is the pendulum's going to swing back to their side. How do I know that's true? because that's always what's happened. And I'll give you guys an example. In the late 70s, Jimmy Carter was the president. And it was very similar in a lot of ways. There were riots on campus. There were high interest rates. There were gas lines.
Inflation.
Iran had taken a bunch of, American hostages. There was, talks of wars. There was all this crap, right? And that was the pendulum. And he was planning, and, this is the first president I remember, but him and his wife were putting solar panels on the top of the White House. They planted some garden, the whole thing, right? That was where the world was at that point. But what happened? Interest rates were too high. Gas lines, people got sick of them. They got sick of the global conflict. They got sick of all the things. And what happened is Ronald Reagan got elected. And then what happened? Interest rates went down after inflation was finally busted. You saw for the first time for a long period of time. Well, guess what? Russia was no longer a superpower. It's arguably now whether they are again. But the moral of the story was that was the pendulum swinging the other direction. And then what happened is the pendulum slowly swung all the way back to where it is now. And guess what it's going to do? It's going to swing the other direction. That's the way life has always worked. Now, I started out by saying that we didn't think there was going to be a precipitous drop in agents. And I'm going to give you guys the most practical answer why. Because we studied it. Julie and I went back to as far as we could go with National Association of Realtors information as far as total members of the National Association of Realtors. And then we took that total numbers thing and we compared it to what was going on in the economy. And what did we see? During hard times, more people get real estate licenses. Why? Because they want to create other sources of income because inflation kicked in. In the late 70s, when interest rates were close to 20%, guess what was still happening? People were buying and selling and getting real estate licenses. So, and yet, if you read the headlines from Inman and from Risk Media and from all these other things, so-and-so expert predicts there to be an agent apocalypse and blah, 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 blah. It's not true. They're just trying to get you to click. They haven't done the actual work. They haven't done the homework yet. Or whatever the motivation is. So that's the type of stuff that you need to give yourself permission to no longer pay attention to, because how does it make you feel? How does it make you feel when you read those headlines? And when you do not feel motivated, when you do not feel excited, when you do not feel like helping people, when you feel disconnected, not just with yourself, but your loved ones and your potential clients, when you're going through that sort of, essentially that pain and that struggle, it's because you're allowing that in your own life. Julie and I think it's literally evil, literal in the literal sense. We think there is a layer of evil that has come into society, and that's the word. We're not going to give it any sort of nerfed up word. It's evil. We believe in good and evil. We are Christians. That is our belief structure, and that evil is going to be washed out because people are getting sick of it. Because in all of our hearts, we all know, whether you have to be reminded of it or not, that our highest, truest purpose on this planet is being of service to other people. That is how we are hardwired. That is how we're designed. I suppose if you're a sociopath, doesn't apply to you, but that is what you're starting to feel, a rejection of essentially the disconnectedness that all of us naturally want to experience and feel with other people, regardless whether we're blue or whether we're red or whatever city we live in or whatever our belief structure is supposed to be. That is the pendulum that's starting to swing back the other direction. So why am I telling you all this? Because you've got to stop allowing people to convince you that the best days for our country, the best days for humanity, and the best days for yourself are behind you. It's complete bullshit. It is absolutely a complete lie. Your best days are still ahead of you. The best days for the United States are like people compare the United States to the Roman Empire. Roman Empire was around 2,000 years. Okay? We've been around for a little more than 300 years. And somehow these brainiacs are trying to say, well, the United States is later stage empire like Roman Empire. Okay, let's revisit in about 1,700 years.
Seriously.
And have that conversation then. But does anyone ask themselves, does it make sense that somehow we'd be you guys get it? It's ridiculous, isn't it? Your highest and truest purpose on this planet, what's going to make you the happiest, the most fulfilled, is being of service to other people. We do this podcast every day in our coaching business and everything we've ever done professionally to be of service to all of you. Your mission as a real estate professional is to be of service to your buyers and your sellers. Our mission is to be of service to all of you so that you can feel fortified to be of service to those folks, your buyers and your sellers. And hopefully that resonates with all of you. If not, keep listening to the podcast. Let us stay in alignment with our mission so you can stay in alignment with yours. Anything else you'd like to say?
Well, I hope that we're wrapping up with you feeling educated, motivated, and now it's your job to get into action.
That's right. That's the bottom line of a fantastic day. We'll talk with you on the show tomorrow.